On episode 311 of the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast, we meet Jonathan Beverly and discuss his book, Run Strong, Stay Hungry. You can find the full show notes for this episode at 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/311. This episode of the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast is sponsored by Fresh Pressed Olive Oil Club. I'm pretty excited about this arrangement that I have with them because, for one, we all know that olive oil is one of the good fats. It's a fat we want to increase in our diet. We want to have more of it. The problem with olive oil is that it's really hard to get good quality olive oil. The grocery stores are just inundated with bad product. It's in many cases not even actually olive oil. And a lot of the olive oils that you will find have been on the shelf for so long that they've really oxidized and they're really not healthy. So with the supply chain that's happening at the grocery store, you end up with a situation of something you're trying to do good for yourself ends up actually doing more harm than good. And so that's what I really like about this club is the owner of it, TJ Robinson. What he does is he goes out to these farms. He makes arrangements with them to buy the fresh pressed olive oil. So as soon as it comes off the yard, they have to press that stuff like straight away. They can't let it sit for very long. So they're pressing it straight away. And then he's shipping it off to his customers directly to your home. Because of this, the oil's coming from different farms across the globe based on the season. So you might be getting some wine, you might be getting some olive oil from Greece, you might be getting some from Italy, all over. And so as it's fresh, he's made these arrangements. He'll ship it directly to your home. And what's really exciting is if you go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/olive oil, this is one word, 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/olive oil. That's going to take you to a special landing page where Fresh Pressed Oil Club is going to give you $1 bottle that would normally retail for $39. So you're going to get an opportunity to taste their product for just $1. And there's no obligation for you to do anything after that. You can cancel and not be a part of their club if you want to be. But here's your chance to get some really, really good quality olive oil, fresh pressed olive oil from the Fresh Pressed Olive Oil Club, mailed directly to you for just $1. So go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/olive oil, and you'll help support the show, and you'll get some great olive oil that you know is healthy and you can enjoy serving to your family. Thank you. Have you decided you're ready to make a change? To reclaim your health and fitness? The 40 Plus Fitness Podcast is here for you. I'm your host, Alan Meisner. I'm an NSAM certified personal trainer with a specialization in corrective exercise and fitness nutrition. Let me be your coach as you find your way on your health and fitness journey. All right, let's go. Hello, and thank you for being a part of the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast. I'm really glad that you're here this week. We have a great guest today. Really enjoyed this conversation with him, and I know you're going to enjoy it yourself. It is about running, but I think really a lot of the concepts we get into are applicable about anybody who kind of gives up on a sport they really enjoy. So we'll get into that in a minute. Before we get there, we didn't have any new reviews or ratings this week on iTunes, so I don't really have any to read. You can go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/review and leave us a rating and review. I really do appreciate that feedback. So if you would go out there and do that for me, I'd really appreciate it. And it helps other people find the podcast, which keeps us growing and helping more people. Now, this week has been a little busy for me. I've started a few new projects over the course of the last few weeks. One of those you may have noticed if you've gone to our website, but I've started putting out the same kind of motivational quotes that I put on the Facebook group and the Facebook page. I've started posting those as blog posts. And so, if you find one you like, if you go out to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/motivation, you'll find an actual page where I've posted that. And, if you find one out there that you like, please share it. Introduce other people to those motivational quotes. Just that little kind of positive thing, maybe in the morning or even late at night when you're starting to struggle with your willpower. Those kind of things, I just try to put those out there so that you have that context, you have something that kind of just gives you that little jolt. And so, again, you can go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/motivation. And I enjoy doing that because I am kind of a hound on quotes. I love quotes. And I'm constantly, using them as somewhat of mantras to keep me on track, keep my mind steady, and those types of things. And so, to me, they're really good lessons in a small, little bite-sized piece. I try to put some nice pictures with them. It takes me a few minutes to do one, so I'm only doing about one a day. But I'll keep those going, and I encourage you to go out to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/motivation and see the motivational quote of the day. I also had kind of started dipping my pen, I guess, for lack of a better word, into the pool of trying to write. And I went ahead and wrote a short article that describes what I think are the 4 reasons most people struggle to lose weight. It is kind of an earmark of when I'm talking to my clients and I'm talking to people, these are the things that I find are the most common reasons that people are struggling with weight loss. And if that's just something you want to know a little bit more about, you can go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/struggle, and you'll find that article there. And if you enjoy the article, please do shoot me an email and let me know you did. You can reach me at alan@40plusfitnesspodcast.com. I enjoy interacting with you. So if you have questions, there's a guest that you want me to get on, anything like that, feel free to email me. But please do go read this article and let me know what you think. I'm looking at, and probably within the next 6 to 9 months, I'm going to try to go ahead and publish a book. I'm doing the preliminary work on that right now, working with a book publisher. It's a pretty intense activity. I'm a little floored at how much is in front of me in the next few months, but I'm also pretty excited because it allows me to take the learnings from over 165 interviews and to distill them into one source that I'll be able to share with you. And so again, working on that, that's a long way coming, but I just kind of let you know that a lot of things are going on here at 40 Plus Fitness Podcast. And I'm so glad you're a part of the listening base. I hope you're on our Facebook group. Appreciate the reviews, appreciate the emails, and all the interaction. I'm going to continue to do the challenges. I'm going to continue to do the courses. I'm going to continue to do the training. And so in any way I can help you at all, please do let me know. You can email me, alan@40plusfitnesspodcast.com, or you can message me at the group or however you want to get in touch. Whatever's the most convenient, easy way for you, please do reach out. Now, our guest today is the former editor of Running Times. He's a coach and he's an author. So he's written several books and articles and all kinds of stuff on running. He's been around running for a long, long time. And we talk about why people hang up their running shoes. And it's kind of a colloquial phrase, but a lot of people that are really good runners when they're younger, they just get to a point and then they peak out and then they just stop. I know I did it. I've seen a lot of other people that have done it. And it just doesn't apply just to running. I mean, I think there's a lot of sports, a lot of times when we are really good at something, we really enjoy something, but then all of a sudden we just stop doing it. Now, so what we're going to talk about today is how you can kind of keep that oomph, how you can keep that hunger for something that you enjoy, or reinvigorate that hunger so that if you were a runner and really enjoyed it, or you played tennis and really enjoyed it, that you can actually now reinvigorate that hunger and get back into that sport. So with no further ado, here's Jonathan Beverly. So Jonathan, welcome to 40 Plus Fitness.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for hosting me.
Now, I really enjoyed your book, Run Strong, Stay Hungry. I'll admit I was never very good, and we'll get into that in a minute. And I never really got great. And I met some challenges along the way, and I kind of got to that chapter talking about why people quit. I kind of got to that Forrest Gump moment of just saying, I'm tired, I'm going home, after I ran an ultra that I realized I had not trained well enough for at all. I finished, but and that was my accomplishment. But it was kind of after that I put my legs up and I said, okay, I don't know that I could go any further on any races, and I don't know that I want to go this far again. It was kind of the end of it for me. I've done some 5Ks and 10Ks and whatnot between since then and that, but it's just more of I do it for the enjoyment. I run a little bit, for the fitness, but I'm not that expert runner.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I think probably the key phrase you said there is you ran an ultra without really being prepared for it.
Yeah.
the joy is in the preparation, as you talked about in the book as well.
It is. I think, that's where because I could run marathons. I'd run like 5 marathons the year before. So, I was trained. It's just because I had a job and everything else, there was not physical time for me to put the mileage in to do a 50-mile trail run.
Right.
And so I trained as if I were training for a marathon when in reality I was going to be running almost 2.
Sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Well, I got through it. I didn't hurt myself. My feet were a little unhappy, and my legs, kind of took a little while for them to rebound. And the adage they have in running: you're either going to pay for it with the training up front, or you're going to pay for it after. And I think I got a little bit of both because I was just halfway there. But yeah. I like how you put the book together. You interviewed 50 different people, some of which had stopped running, and others who just continue to not just run, but actually look at it as an athlete. They look at it as they want to compete and they want to do more. And you're somewhat in that range. Can you talk about your story and how that compelled you to look into doing this book?
Sure. Yeah, I'm probably pretty typical of the runners in the book, although maybe the least accomplished. As you said, I was never very good and never got that great. I was your typical nerdy freshman in high school. Had a sickly youth, was small, was smart, and in fact, I'd skipped a grade, so I was a year younger even. So of course, didn't go out for football, but I wanted to be involved in sports and found running and immediately loved it as a sport where tenacity was more important than natural talent, and quickly, even though I didn't get that good, advanced enough to go to state on a cross country team. I never qualified for state individually, but I loved it so much so that I ran a marathon when I was 16 and continued running throughout my life, ups and downs. But it's been something that I've loved enough that when in my 30s, I was working as an administrator at NYU, coaching with the New York Road Runners Club, and started writing about running, and eventually that became my career. I became editor of Running Times, and have been involved in running and coaching all my life. And now here I am, 53, been running for 40 years now, and still love it. Still love the challenge of setting a goal and trying to accomplish it, seeing myself get better, and I love the running. I love the daily running, getting out and having it part of my life.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the big thing is when folks really get into running, they almost without a doubt they are going to consider themselves a runner, much like someone who does CrossFit. Suddenly they're a CrossFit athlete, and someone so that is one of those types of sports where it's going to become a part of your identity. The amount of time that you're going to invest in it becomes a part of your identity.
For sure, and I think that's important, and it's key because it then it becomes something that you want to maintain. It's not I do this and it's sort of a fad right now. It's who I am, and I don't feel right if I'm not doing it.
Yeah, it's just the fad that's been going on since the 70s.
Exactly.
Now, you have 9 principles in the book that you go into as to what would keep someone engaged in running and remaining a runner rather than hanging up their tennis shoes. And I don't think it's any surprise, it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone, that only 3 of them are physiological and 6 of them are psychological.
Yeah, and this just developed from the interviews. I didn't set out that way. In fact, if you had asked me before I started research, I would have said been evenly balanced or even more. I thought I was going to get a lot more training principles. But what people talked about and what became clear is that getting your mind around it is much more difficult and more important than any specifics that you do as far as training and strategy or type of workouts or stretches or anything.
And as I got into them, and I was reading the stories, which are really kind of the driver of the book, it really makes it a very good read. Is that you could apply those same concepts to just about anything that you wanted to do in your life, that you wanted to be really good at.
That's a good observation. I agree with you.
And so I want to go through a few of them today because I think these resonated as these were the things that kept me engaged in the things that I have done and done well. Like I said, I was a runner. I did the best I could. Finally got to a point, and I'm one of the guys who, for lack of a better word, I hung up my tennis shoes and stopped competing. But other things that I've done very well or done very long, these were things that I felt like I had behind me that really made it important for me and why I kept doing it. The first one I want to talk about is a physiological principle, and it's consistency.
Yeah, and this is the first one, and again, probably shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that the way to keep running is to keep running, obviously. uh, but what I found was, I think perhaps a surprise to people is that we have this idea that if you do a lot, that you're going to get hurt. Both research and people's stories show that it isn't the volume, it isn't the amount of training or how much you do that causes you to get hurt, but typically it's the up and down. It's ramping up and then falling off and then ramping up again. You get hurt on the ramping up. That running a lot regularly makes you strong, makes you robust. And I see these people, people like Bill Rogers or Joan Benoit Samuelson who've run 80, 100, 120 miles a week since 1972, that they've been doing it, but they're strong. I mean, they do it again. It's appropriate. It's not a reach. It's within. It's what they consistently do. And of course, that's elite. They have the ability to do that. But then there's others. Craig Christian's the guy I interviewed from Omaha. His average is about 30 miles a week, but he's been doing it again for 40 something years, and he's still a top Masters competitor. You get out there and you're consistently fit, and it's when you fall away and you gain weight and you get out of shape, and then you're trying to come back is when you get hurt.
Yeah. And in the book, you talked a little bit about streaks, and I guess that as a mindset for runners is to just want to run every day rather than take the rest days that are necessary. So you kind of did a little compare and contrast. Could you take a little bit of time to talk about streaks versus making sure that you get adequate recovery?
Yeah, most of the runners were anti-streaks. Again, consistency is not constancy. You don't have to run every day or the same amount every day. In fact, key two is variety. It's consistency with variety. There are a few people who have run every single day for 40, 50 years and done really well. But most people who are streakers, the people who have to get in a certain amount, 1 mile every day, the streak becomes the thing to maintain. And so they tend not to be the most competitive people because they can't risk getting hurt, so they can't get out the next day.
Yeah.
But the majority of people take a day off a week. Will take 2 or 3 days off when they feel like they're hurt or banged up a little bit and need to recover. But the default is, I think, the consistency is default is run. The default is run, and a day off is an exception, as opposed to am I going to run today? It's always when I'm going to run today. Yeah. So I think in some ways the day off a week or the up and down. Consistency can include seasons.
Yeah.
You're still a runner, but instead of doing 80-mile weeks training for your 50-mile trail race, you're doing 35-mile weeks and maintaining that fitness, maintaining that. One other thing about consistency that I found interesting that across the board was that it helps with the psychology of it too, is that if you are fit enough to be out running every day, then it's easier to run. That not only are you more likely to get hurt by ramping up, but it's just harder. It's just psychologically harder to rebuild the habit and to put in the miles. An interesting quote, Scott Douglas, he was the former editor of Running Times. He writes, he's written several books now, but he says it's easier to run 50-mile weeks than 20-mile weeks. And that sounds counterintuitive, but I think it's true, because once you built that and that's normal, then your body's used to it. Your patterns are there, and you have the ability to get out and run and just run. It's not a struggle to actually run.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that you had in there that I do want to caveat before we move on is with consistency, and we start talking, that doesn't mean every day you're running, like you said. Some of the days you're off, but those off days can often be other activities like the elliptico or weightlifting or something like that that's going to also enhance some aspect of your running, but you're just not doing the running.
Absolutely. And I think, especially as you get older, this is important, the variety of stresses and the variety of things. For me, it's usually walking or hiking. Just go out for a 6-mile walk with my wife in a park. And that's it's still very active. You're getting flexibility, but it's not running. It's not the running stress, or biking, mountain biking, or as you say, whatever you can do that you're still out and active, and it's still part of the habit, but you're not adding to that total stress of mileage.
Yes, yes. So now the next one I wanted to get into, which was a very compelling chapter for me, was the psychological principle of humility and hunger. Because in a lot of ways, I feel like that was probably where I broke down from, being a lifelong runner, was that, I didn't have those in the right proportion. So could you talk a little bit about that?
It was a very interesting chapter to develop. It again wasn't one I probably would have predicted that would be in there, because I was interviewing people that were Olympic gold medalists. A lot of them are really, really accomplished runners, and what I discovered is very quickly that when I was interviewing people, I'd start with how you began and have you sort of work through your life, and they'd say, I started in school, and like you said, and like I said, the second phrase out of their mouth was, I was never very good, or I didn't start very. Everybody was faster than me. I wasn't a champion from the beginning. And these people who have maintained throughout their lives consistently were humble in that sense. And given that they probably weren't the best, what I've discovered both through the interviews and then some psychological research I did was that starting out, it was a really handicapped to start out good. If you have success, then very quickly, rather than the joy of the activity, the joy is in the success, is in the rewards, in the accolades, and you start to change. It's not a feeling of, okay, I can get better, but I'm already good, and I just have to keep proving that I'm good. And so this twist, even those of us who aren't that good can fall into this twist of that the purpose of it is to check the box and to have the rewards at the end, as opposed to you can get better. You can always get better. And the joy, what I found in these lifetime competitors, is even Dina Castor, obviously this woman who's set American records and got an Olympic gold. He says the joy hasn't really been in the accolades, and it's been in the consistently seeing that I can become a better person. So you're still trying, still striving. It's not just saying, okay, I'm just going to be fit with this, although that's a nice thing to be too.
Yeah.
But the actual process of saying, okay, here's where I am now. What can I be tomorrow? That is where the real joy comes in the running, and in the training or whatever you're doing, is saying, can I be a better person? That's pretty cool that you can make yourself better. So it's the change, it's the delta from where you started to where you're going is where the reward of it is not the absolute point of where you end up.
Yeah, I liked how in the book you said it's kind of a function of talent and effort, and those that kind of come in with some outstanding talent at the beginning, they kind of get that mindset of, this is something that I just do because of the talent I have, versus the folks that maybe struggled a little bit early on, but enjoyed putting in the effort because they were seeing themselves get better. That kind of broke them down into those two different mindsets.
For sure. And that's it. So it's those of us who didn't have much talent have an advantage in that sense. It's one of the areas that we do. We don't think we do. We think, wow, wouldn't it be great to have Kenenisa Bekele's speed? But he, I think the ones for a lifetime competitor, you're much better off to learn. And the other thing that happens with that is that you learn with an optimistic mindset, which says, okay, here's a challenge. It's not, okay, here's a challenge, therefore I'm not going to be able to accomplish. It's not going to come easy for me, so it's not worth doing. Here's a challenge. Okay, that's great. It's another obstacle that I can overcome and feel good about having overcome.
Yeah, I was in the Army, and in basic training, at the end of your basic training, you have to run a 2-mile run. So you do the physical training test. So there's the push-ups, the sit-ups, and then the 2-mile run. And I think I needed to finish the 2-mile run in something like 13 minutes to get all the points. But there was a guy in one of the other units that everybody was talking about. He was the state track star. He was this long distance cross country runner, and everybody was just talking about how fast this kid was. And I'm thinking to myself, what I want to do is I just want to see how fast he is and see if I can beat him. And I think the fastest I'd ever run 2 miles was somewhere around 11:30, some in that range. And so I'm like, okay, if this guy's as fast as they say, he's probably right around 5-minute miles, I was thinking. So I set out on a pace of 5-minute miles, and everybody in my unit is like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And unfortunately, he caught me in the fourth lap, and I actually ended up coming in third. But it was just kind of one of those things where I just aspired to say, if this guy's doing that, and I'm pretty sure this was mostly talent, but because in basic training, they really didn't run you enough that you were getting a training effect. But I would do extra running just to get a training effect. And so I worked on my speed and did all the different things that I thought I needed to do to be able to beat this guy in the 2-mile, and I ended up coming in third. But it was just kind of that process of kind of looking at someone and being hungry and wanting to get there.
That's awesome. Awesome story. And one thing, I think this is important for the masters athlete too, in that it's not dependent on the absolute measure. I mean, there's this feeling of sort of, well, if I can't do it as well as the 20-year-old, then I'm too old for this. Like the Danny Glover line, It's like, but if the goal is then can I get better? How can I change from today? Where can I get to? And your age is one of the factors. Just one of the factors you need to factor in and to acknowledge, but not give into. Just say, okay, that's pretty good for a 53-year-old. and also, the humility is to say there's some really fast 53-year-olds too, that not give in and settle. Well, all the rest of people around me are gained 50 pounds and sitting watching football.
Yeah.
but you can always look up, and you can always aspire to getting better at whatever age you are.
Yeah, and I think that's an extremely important point, is to realize that we unfortunately we are going to slow down some. How fast we slow down is really going to be a function of how much effort we're willing to put in, keeping ourselves healthy, but just training smart and knowing that we can be faster, or at least slow the decline of age with running if we're going to put in that effort.
Yeah. And then something, your story about, you said the line that you didn't have the time in your life to train appropriately for that ultra, that to acknowledge some of those constraints. And that's, again, one of the factors in terms of the hunger, is that you need to have an appropriate goal that you can still get better, even if you can't do the ultra. Maybe at this time in your life, the 5K is more appropriate, and there's plenty of room to improve there too.
Yes, and I think that's the thing, is my talent, if I had a talent at all, was the engine to just keep going. The willpower to keep my body moving, even when it didn't want to. The talent I didn't have was speed, and it's another funny story. So I joined the track team. They started a track team at my school, and so it's my junior year, and I go to my first track meets at this very big school, and the coach comes to me, and I'm the 2-mile runner, but I'm slow. I know I'm slow based on the times I'm seeing other high schoolers run. I'm looking at their times from prior years, and I'm like, I'm going to have to work really hard to get to that speed if I can even do it. Well, he puts me in the 1-mile run. He says, they don't have a 2-mile today, so I want you to represent us in the 1-mile. And when these guys took off, it was like they were doing a 100-meter sprint. And I was like, what? And they're gone. So the only thing I could think to do is just run my race. At that point, I had trained what I had trained. I was as good as I was going to be for that day. So it was about just putting in my best effort, much like the one when I was in the Army. I came in third there but I felt good because it was the best 2-mile time I'd ever clocked. It was my PR. And, in this race, I'm running, and I'm on the 4th lap, and, I'm about to finish my 3rd lap, and the coach is like, scoot to the second. And I scoot over, and the winner comes sprinting past me. And so I got lapped on my first mile, and I was like, oh, wow. It was a whole wake up call to me. And I've got to change a lot if I'm going to be the type of runner that can compete in this sport. And so I think seeing those things and understanding, yes, the 20-year-old is probably going to be faster than me, but that doesn't mean I can't beat some of the other 20-year-olds. And if I see on my record some 20-year-olds that are behind me in time, I know that that's my effort. I know that's what I've put into it, and I can always put in a little bit more or train a little bit smarter and do better next time.
It's a great story. And it's interesting. One of the things you just said is that your strength was never being fast. again, the fixed mindset says, okay, so well, then I shouldn't try to be fast. The growth mindset says, well, this is an area that I could work on, right? And just as you just said, and you could, that could be something that even now, it can be a challenge and say, I never was fast. What could I do? How could I work on that and see what I could do as a mile now at this age?
Absolutely. And I think that's the thing is, different races are going to appeal to different types of runners, different people. And so finding something that you enjoy competing at and then working on the skills that you need to be successful there, that's where I think the magic is. So now the last psychological principle I want to talk about that I also think was really, really important is to stay connected.
And what I saw with across the board, that people not only just had their own running, but they had some way. A lot of them were coaches, as I am. And you stick around long enough and people think you have some wisdom, so you can. But which is related, they tend to have some wisdom because one of the principles is that they're students of the sport. You have to sort of understand how this different types of training affect your body if you're going to keep doing it for all these years. But coaches or volunteers at races or writers about races or working on their local USATF youth programs or some way that I think accomplishes two things. One, it gets you out of yourself and you get to see other people's goals and see their progress and their setbacks. And somehow, somebody else's bad race seems you're totally clear why they had a bad race, whereas for your own, you tend to say, okay, well, that's it. That's terrible. And somebody else is like, oh, obviously you've been training really hard right now and you're a little bit worn out. We need to get some rest, or it was a hot day or something. But so it gives you some perspective, and then you can apply that perspective back to yourself. And then secondly, that in the ups and downs of life, no matter how consistent and variable and smart you are, people do get hurt or have a phase in their life for something that's taking them away and they're not running as well as they would like to. You're still connected to the sport and see the joy of other people and the whole beauty of the sport. So when it is time to come back, it's natural for you to come back again and not just drift away and not think of yourself as a runner anymore.
Yeah. And I, like when I was running, it was just solo, other than when I was on the team in high school. Most of it, I was just a solo runner training on my own, wanting to do these things. And I think that's really where the disconnect was I never really built the relationships with other runners or got that connected with the sport to really be that lifelong competitor. Right.
Yeah. And there's a two-edged sword there that the runners do. I think they have to be able to run by themselves. That was one of the principles I saw, that you can't be dependent on other people, but the other people can certainly pull you along. Just to have a training partner sometimes in your life that expects you to be out there is huge.
Yeah, we have some friends that they've started running clubs wherever they've lived as they've moved around. They've started running clubs, and the running clubs continue to exist after they leave a place. So now they basically have spawned these different running clubs that, they're all still in touch. They all do their Monday night run with a couple of beers afterwards. And it really is compelling when you know that you've got that community of like-minded people that are going to hold you somewhat accountable, because they're going to ask, are you coming out Monday? But beyond that, you see their ups and downs. Like you said, you're getting kind of a juice from their experiences, even when you're injured and not running, or, business has pulled you out of town and you're not able to run with them, or you're training for a different distance and therefore you've got to put on more miles than maybe many of them would be. I think all of those are compelling reasons to have that kind of thing around you.
I agree wholeheartedly. I've coached high school for over a decade now, and as responsible for me continuing to not only run but be a competitive runner, to be around the youth and just wanted to be fit enough to be able to run with them most of the time.
Yeah. So, Jonathan, the book is Run Strong, Stay Hungry. If someone would want to learn more about you or more about the book, where would you like for me to send them?
Probably the easiest place is just jonathanbeverly.com. That's a website that has links to 2 books I've written and a lot of my writing. You can find the books on Amazon, on Velo Press, anywhere books are sold.
Okay. Well, this is going to be episode 311. So you can go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/311, and I'll be sure to have all the links there. So, Jonathan, thank you for being a part of the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast.
It's been great to talk with you. Thank you.
Now, if you haven't done this already, would you please give the show a rating and review? You can typically use the podcast app that you're listening to right now to do that, or you can go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/review and leave a rating and review there. I really do want to have a rating and review from you so that I know that what I'm doing is helping you. And I know the types of topics you want me to cover, things that you've enjoyed in the past, things that I can go into more detail with. I really enjoy using that as a way to get to know you better. And I am going to start reading those on the air as we go, and they are posted on the website. So if you go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/review, you can leave a rating and review on iTunes. And again, it really helps people find the show. It helps me understand what I'm doing well and what I can improve on. So I really do appreciate the feedback. Thank you. Now, if you did enjoy today's show, you're really going to enjoy next week when we have Jay Deshary on and we discuss his book, Running Rewired. Until then, have a happy and healthy week.